It was a warm evening in Memphis, late summer 1976. A boy stood on the corner, guitar in hand, eyes closed. His voice carried "Can't Help Falling in Love" into the twilight. What he didn't know, the king himself was just steps away. Listening, this is the story of a street corner, a blind teenager, and a moment that silenced an entire block. Stay with me because what happened next is still talked about nearly 50 years later. The guitar strings were out of tune, but his voice perfect. It was the kind of heat that made the air shimmer above the asphalt. Memphis, late summer of 1976. The dinner crowd spilled onto Bill Street. Laughter and clinking glasses drifting from a nearby diner. The smell of barbecue smoke hung thick in the air, mixing with the faint metallic temps of hot pavement. Near the corner, under the glow of a buzzing street lamp, a teenage boy stood alone. 17 maybe, dark hair curling at the edges, sunglasses hiding the eyes he could not use. His white cane leaned against the lamppost like an old friend. Across his shoulder, a battered guitar strap patched twice with silver duct tape, low against his ribs. He wasn't imitating Elvis. He was living the song. Wise men say. The sound wasn't polished. It was raw, trembling in some spots, soaring in others. But every note carried a truth that made strangers slow their steps. A couple, mid-40s, stopped a few feet away. The man pulled a few coins from his pocket and dropped them into the open guitar case. The metallic clink made the boy's head tilt slightly, his lips curling into a brief smile before he kept singing. Traffic rolled past, horns and muffled engines blending into the background. From somewhere behind him, the hiss of a soda machine. From in front, footsteps, more of them now. The small knot of listeners had grown to a half circle, and then the black car. It slid up to the curb across the street, paint so glossy it mirrored the neon signs. The back door opened, and a man in dark sunglasses stepped out. He wore a light jacket despite the heat. His hair, thick, jet black, caught the street lamp glow. He didn't look around. He didn't greet anyone. His gaze locked on the boy as if the rest of the world had gone silent. The man paused at the edge of the street, listening. His hand rested casually on the roof of the car, but his body leaned forwards just slightly, like someone pulled toward a magnet. The boy strummed harder, his voice cracking slightly on the next line. Not from weakness, but from leaning so deep into the music he forgot the streets, the crowd, even himself. The man in sunglasses took one step off the curb, then another. A few people in the crowd noticed. One woman's mouth fell open. She grabbed the arm of the man beside her, whispering something urgently. The boy didn't see it. He kept singing. The man kept walking, and in just a few steps, the king of rock and roll was standing right in front of him. The man crosses the final few feet and reaches for the boy's shoulder. A hand landed on his shoulder. The song faltered. The boy froze. Mid-chord, the note ringing just long enough to vanish into the warm Memphis night. The hand was firm, but not heavy. A man's voice smooth, warm, and edged with a smile cut through the street noise. Mind if I join you? The boy's brows knit together. He turned his head slightly toward the voice, weighing it for kindness or mockery. It didn't sound like mockery. He gave a small nod. The man stepped closer, resting one boot against the curb. His other hand reached for the neck of the guitar, not to take it, but to match its tuning with a strum from his own. No one had noticed the smaller guitar slung over his back until now. The moment those rich, confident chords rang out, the crowd stirred. They knew it took 3 notes, Just three for the first whisper to ripple through the circle. "It's Elvis." Gasps followed. A man at the back pulled off his cap and held it to his chest. A waitress from the diner came running out, still holding a coffee pot. Someone hissed, "Don't say anything, just watch." The boy's fingers trembled on the frets, nearly missing his cue. But then the man's voice, deep, velvety, unmistakable, slid into harmony. Alongside his own, the sound was like nothing the street had ever heard. The boy's rough, soulful tone against the king's practiced warmth. It didn't sound rehearsed, sounded alive, mid-verse. Elvis glanced at the crowd, a playful half-smile tugging at his mouth. His head gave the slightest nod, urging them closer. People shuffled in, shoulder to shoulder, drawn by something they couldn't name but couldn't ignore. The boy's breathing was quick, almost uneven, but he didn't back down. He leaned into the mic really. Lyndon let his voice rise. Elvis matched him note for note, then let the kid take the melody while he slid into a gentle harmony, like a river flows, surely to the sea. From the edge of the crowd came the unmistakable sound of someone stifling a sob. The music carried above the car engines, the clink of glasses, the distant bark of a dog down the block. Then the song began to build toward the chorus. The boy could feel it, the way you feel a storm just before it breaks. And that's when Elvis did something no one expected. Instead of taking the spotlight for the big moment, he stepped back. His right hand reached into his jacket. The crowd leaned forward, thinking they might see a handkerchief or a prop. The boy, still singing, tilted his head, sensing movement. Elvis kept one hand strumming his guitar. The other closed around something at his neck as the final line of the verse faded. Elvis lifted the object free, a flash of silk, catching the streetlight. The king of rock and roll bent down on one knee, in the middle of a Memphis sidewalk. The crowd pressed closer, but no one dared break the circle. The street lamps cast long shadows across cracked pavement, the smell of barbecue still drifting from somewhere up the block. Elvis lowered himself slowly, one knee hitting the warm concrete so he was eye to eye with the boy. His sunglasses slipped, just enough to reveal the glint of his gaze, focused, soft, and locked on the young musician in front of him. He tilted the microphone toward the boy. "Your turn," he said quietly. The boy swallowed hard, fingers gripping the worn plastic guitar pick until the edges dug into his skin. He strummed, hesitant at first, then with growing strength. His voice cracked on the first note, but he kept going. A hush fell over the street. You could hear the faint hiss from an old guitar amp plugged into an open diner outlet, the rustle of someone shifting their weight in the crowd. Elvis just smiled, nodding in rhythm, letting the kid take the stage entirely. When the boy reached the end of the verse, Elvis slid in under hymn-low harmony, rich as velvet, lifting the sound instead of overpowering it. By now, people in the back were standing on benches to see over the heads in front. One woman pressed both hands to her cheeks, tears streaming freely. A teenage couple clung to each other, swaying to the music. Sweat beaded on Elvis's temple, catching the light every time he moved. The boy couldn't see it, but he could feel the warmth radiating beside him. He could hear the breath between Elvis's notes, could sense the weight of someone playing with him, not over him. The chorus swelled, and the crowd began to sing along, soft at first, then stronger. A wave of voices carrying "I Can't Help Falling in Love with You" down the block. Elvis glanced around, his face breaking into a grin. Then he leaned closer to the boy, their shoulders nearly touching, and they finished the chorus. Together, That's when Elvis's right hand reached for the silk around his neck. The white scarf, edged in blue stitching, slid free. He held it for a moment, the fabric rippling in the faint summer breeze. The boy's strumming slowed, his voice trailed. He could hear the rustle of fabric as Elvis moved it closer. Without a word, Elvis reached forward and draped the scarf gently around the boy's neck. The boy's fingers touched silk soft, cool, unfamiliar. The scarf slid across his skin, and the boy froze. He reached up instinctively, running his fingertips over the smooth fabric, tracing the stitched edge. The crowd erupted applause, whistles, and the kind of cheers that shake your chest. People were clapping above their heads, some shouting Elvis's name, others just laughing in disbelief. Elvis leaned close enough that the boy could hear his voice, but no one else could. His words were short, just a sentence. Years later, the boy would say, "I'll never repeat what he told me, but it gave me courage." Without missing a beat, Elvis strummed the opening to the final chorus. The boy joined him instantly, scarf swaying lightly with every movement. Together, they drove the song home, Elvis holding harmony, the boy taking lead, their voices carrying far beyond the corner of Beale Street from the edge of the crowd. Someone started filming on a bulky home video camera for 1976. Most people just watched, knowing this was something they'd be telling their grandkids. As the last chord rang out, Elvis didn't move right away. He let the moment sit, hanging in the warm night air like the afterglow of a firework. Then the applause surged again. It rolled over them in waves, echoing off brick walls and neon signs. Elvis stood, helping the boy to his feet with one steady hand. For a moment, they just stood there side by side, facing a crowd that had doubled in size since the song began. Elvis handed his guitar back to a man in his entourage, but didn't leave. He bent slightly to speak to the boy's mother, who had appeared near the front, one hand pressed to her mouth in disbelief. Witnesses recall her nodding quickly, even wiping her eyes as she answered him. Behind them, the black car waited with its engine running, headlights cutting through the summer haze. The driver leaned against the door, clearly in no rush. Elvis gave the boy a final pat on the shoulder, then turned toward the street, but he didn't get in the car right away. He stood for another moment, looking back, smiling at the sight of the boy adjusting the scarf like it was the most valuable thing in the world, mid-roll hook. But the moment didn't end here. In fact, the best part came days later when the boy got something in the mail. Elvis finally steps into the car, but as it pulls away, the boy's mother holds something in her hands, something Elvis had just given her. 3 days later, the mailman stopped at their door with a package too big for the mailbox. The boy's mother signed for it, her pen scratching across the paper. She turned the box over in her hands like brown cardboard, no return label except for a Memphis postmark. Inside their small apartment, the scent of breakfast still lingered from that morning coffee, toast, a hint of bacon. She set the package on the kitchen table and called for her son. He came in slowly, his white cane tapping the floor. "What is it?" he asked. She guided his hands to the box. "You tell me." The tape peeled away with a soft rip. Under the flaps there was a bed of crumpled newspaper. His fingers brushed wood smooth, cool, solid. His breath caught. It was a brand new Gibson guitar. Glossy sunburst finish, strings shining under the kitchen light. The kind of instrument he'd only ever dreamed about. And there, tucked beneath the strings, a folded piece of cream stationery. He unfolded it carefully, running his fingertips. over the ink like he could feel the words themselves. You'll always have a seat in the front row. He didn't speak for almost an hour, just sat in the wooden kitchen chair, guitar resting across his lap, head bowed. His mother moved quietly in the background, watching him the way you watch a miracle. That night, the neighborhood heard something new. From the small apartment window came the bright, rich tone of the Gibson. He played softly at first, almost reverently, then with more confidence. Love me tender, can't help falling in love. Sometimes just simple chords, filling the warm summer air. Days turned into weeks. Every evening, as the sun dipped behind the rooftops, he'd be there on the same street corner where he met Elvis, scarf still looped around his neck, Gibson in hand. People began to plan their walks just to pass by and hear him play. One evening, an older man stopped and listened for nearly an hour. When the last song ended, he told the boy, "I saw that night. I saw him kneel next to you, and I've never forgotten it." The boy smiled, fingers resting on the strings. "Me neither," he said. Years later, that guitar would show up somewhere unexpected still, with the note tucked in its case. But that's another story. For now, all that mattered was the sound that started with a street corner, a stranger in sunglasses, and a song they both loved. Decades later, the voice was older, deeper but instantly recognizable to those who had been there. The radio station's small studio smelled faintly of coffee and dust. It was a grey morning, rain streaking the windows. A man in his late 50s sat in front of a microphone, a sunburst Gibson guitar resting against his leg. The host leaned forward. "So, tell us about the scarf." The man chuckled softly. "It's in a frame at home, right above my bed." He adjusted the guitar strap over his shoulder, fingers brushing the worn frets. That night, it changed everything. I'd been playing on the street for years. I thought maybe people heard me, but after that, I knew they did. The host asked what it felt like to sing with Elvis. The man didn't answer right away. He let the silence stretch. Outside the booth, the red on-air sign glowed. Finally, he said, "It felt like someone believed in me before I believed in myself." Sound engineers' notepads shuffled. Listeners at home could almost picture the scene as he described it: the heat, the crowd, the king dropping to one knee. He didn't embellish. He didn't have to. The details were enough. Hose tapped the guitar body. "Mind giving us a little something?" The man nodded. His fingers found the opening chords of "Can't Help Falling in Love." The first notes rang clear, warm. Halfway through the verse, the host's voice joined in, hesitant at first, then stronger. It mirrored that night in 1976, one voice leading, another sliding in beside it. By the second chorus, the whole studio was singing. The producer, the receptionist, anyone within earshot, and somewhere, someone listening in their car, stuck at a red light, smiled without even realizing it. When the final chord faded, the host said, "You know, that's the kind of story people share for the rest of their lives." The man nodded. "Yeah, but it's not really about me. It's about kindness, about how one small choice can echo for decades." That scarf still hangs above his bed. The Gibson still plays, though its finish is worn from years of use. And the memory, still as sharp as the sound of a crowd falling silent when a king knelt beside a boy on a summer night. If this moved you, share it with someone who believes kindness can stop a crowd. What's the most unforgettable act of kindness you've ever seen?